Hello and welcome to the Circle of Influence, a collaborative podcast brought to you by the CFDA and the RealReal, which takes a deep dive into fashion sustainability's past, present, and future. In a world still reeling from the impact of COVID-19 and social unrest, the conversation is more urgent than ever. On behalf of the RealReal, I'm your host, Julie Gilhart, President of Tomorrow Projects and Chief Development Officer of Tomorrow Limited. On today's episode, we'll be hearing from three industry leaders who are pioneering the cause for sustainability in fashion, each from different walks of life. Joining us today from Montana is Claire Bergkamp, newly appointed Chief Operating Officer at the Textile Exchange and former Worldwide Sustainability and Innovation Director at Stella McCartney. Mara Hoffman in upstate New York is founder, president, and creative director of her own namesake label. And from Phipps, based in Paris, we welcome Spencer Phipps, founder and designer of his own menswear label. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for gathering from all over the world today to talk about a very important subject. Let's just start with a question for everyone. Sustainability can take on many meanings that can often be confused to customers and consumers. But in your own businesses, how do each of you simply define true, authentic sustainability?
The way that I look at it, because sustainability is like almost a nothing word. It's not a concrete thing. It's more a mindset. It's sort of a goal-oriented with no finish line. You can never really there's no, you arrive and then you are sustainable. That doesn't necessarily happen ever. So for me, the way that I define it in my own life and in the way that we do business is that we do the best we can with the information that we have at the time. And so it's about just making the best business practices the priority and trying to constantly do better and constantly looking for ways that you can do better, ways that you've maybe not done the best you can, and kind of constantly assessing and reassessing those goals to just, constantly improve.
Yeah, which is a good way of approaching it because, with innovation and technology is a constantly changing space. That's a good answer. Mara?
Following Spencer's demand, I also feel that it is a constant work, that at least I can speak for myself and my brand, that it wouldn't even be right to say we are a sustainable brand. We are in the work of it. We are in the pursuit of it at all costs. So I think for us, it also is choosing each path with the least amount of harm and then going above that and not just sitting at that level, but going at it from as much of a holistic approach from, not stopping at the environmental side, but the humanistic aspect of this work, and that it is an all-encompassing journey to do this, especially within the fashion industry. So it's trying to find something better and leaving something hopefully much better.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, I remember the first time I heard the word carbon positive, and I thought that was really cool, not neutral, but positive. On that note, Claire, what's your take on it?
Well, the Textile Exchange, the organization I'm working for, is really focused on materials. And I think that, when we're talking about fashion, we do start with materials no matter what we're making. So I think that that's the lens that I'm thinking about this topic through. But I agree with what's been said in that it is a never-ending journey. And it is about moving beyond just maintaining this idea of we're going to stay at this level, and looking at opportunities within materials for regeneration, for reforestation, for rewilding, for actually helping nature bounce back. We know that when nature is in balance, that it can restore itself, but we've whacked it so far away from any level of balance that we're going to have to be part of the solution to regain that balance. And I think the idea of balance and sustainability go hand in hand, but the idea of sustaining the state we're in is no longer good enough if we want to address the kind of urgent level of the climate crisis that we're facing ahead of us. I think that more concretely, from a company point of view, it is about prioritizing. It's about finding where, what are the materials you're using the most of, or where are your biggest impacts, and finding the radical interventions and solutions that you can make to shifting the way that you interact with sourcing and growing and recycling and all of it.
I think it's really important for our audience to understand that how there's a global goal of holding at 1.5 centigrades, requiring that we slash greenhouse gas emissions 45% below 2010 levels by 2030 and reaching, I think, a net zero by 2050. I mean, that is a very specific thing for the planet. Can you just put that in more layman terms for people that may not know this?
So that is the trajectory that we have to achieve. We have to achieve a 45% reduction by 2030 if we have any chance of staying within the 1.5 degree pathway. The difference between the 1.5 degree pathway and a 2 degree pathway is massive. I think these sound like small numbers, but they are not. We're talking about a 2 to 3 times increase in loss of biodiversity, a 14% impact on population to around a 40% on population for severe weather and heat. And so it's very, very urgent that we address this. A 45% reduction in carbon is a huge feat that it's going to take all of us together looking at how we can transform these systems to achieve it. We cannot achieve it even by just adopting preferred methods. We do have to look at more radical interventions. If we kept on the path we're on, we're absolutely not going to achieve it. But even if we switched all of our sourcing to recycled materials and organic materials, it might not even be enough at the rate of growth that we're on. Even at a 3% growth, which is kind of the rate we're at now, we won't be able to do it. So it's going to be not only about making sure that we do things better, it's also going to be about slowing things down. The rate of growth has to slow down. We have to decouple this idea of economic growth and prosperity, that we can find other ways to be prosperous without having to increase production and consumption. There's been a lot of talk for a lot of years around this idea of new business models, and I think that we really do have to think about other ways to access fibers, to access materials, to access this idea of new without the actual creation of and continual growth of consumption around the world. So what it actually means, I think, from a fashion point of view is, first of all, adopting better materials, and then second of all, really rethinking what we're putting out into the world. And I know that, this is something, Mara, that you've done a huge amount of work of in your brand.
I'm with you. It's extraordinarily daunting when you are manufacturing new and where to make these shifts. Today, it's perfect. Today, we are launching our first climate beneficial product. So it's exciting. We did 2 wool sweaters and beanies that we feel excited about, that are carbon positive products.
That's amazing. Spencer, you do a lot of upcycling and using repurposed vintage materials. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and the creative process?
Yeah, on a personal level, I'm just like a vintage junkie. I've been buying, trading, hunting vintage since I had old enough to have money to shop, So it's really personal for me, but also, there's that statistic I read somewhere that everyone in the world could wear a different piece of clothing every day for the next year without ever buying something. There's enough stuff in the world. There's a million pieces of clothing, garments existing every minute that are new. So we've taken it upon ourselves to either upcycle, either materials using leftover pieces, and even introducing part of our brand is literally just garments, ready-made, finished pieces that we sort of rebrand and curate in a way that expands on the storytelling of the products that we're already doing. I don't need to worry about making new denim or flannel shirts or things like that, which are very, nice commercial products. We can just find the best ones and they're there. They're beautiful. They're actually better than buying a new one off the rack because they have this history, which for me is so exciting. It's what I love about pre-existing stuff. There's a backstory.
Yeah, I mean, definitely with the younger customer, they that's actually a preferred way of buying in a sense. For statistics show that. So you're setting yourself up for that new customer when they have more spending dollars for sure. Claire, I know you've got this new role at the Textile Exchange, and I'm just curious if you can talk about a little bit about what the Textile Exchange is, so people know if they don't know, and how what do you think are the major differences between working for a brand like Stella and sourcing raw materials, and then now you're working for a company that actually focuses on it? Do you want to just tell us about that? Also, it's a nonprofit, which makes it really interesting.
Yeah, I've just recently joined Textile Exchange as their COO. For people who don't know, Textile Exchange is a global nonprofit that focuses on Tier 4, is kind of what we call it in the industry. If we break out our areas of production, Tier 4, which would be the kind of furthest away tier, is where raw materials are. So the focus of the organization is on raw materials. So that means how we grow our cotton, how we recycle, that kind of part of the world, which has always been my personal passion, is how we farm, how we grow things, how we can leverage those systems to address major problems. And so Textile Exchange has around, I think it's almost 500 members at this stage. So we have a lot of brand members. We also have a lot of supplier members. We have farmers that are members. It's a really nice kind of area where we can convene people together to come up with collective solutions. We run roundtables on different fibers, on topics around cashmere, and organic cotton, around biosynthetics, and those roundtables have around 2,500 people participating in them. So it's a really incredible platform for convening the industry to collectively look at how we address material problems and sourcing problems. And I'm joining in a really exciting time because we're about to roll out and implement a Climate Plus strategy. The plus represents the idea of making sure that we include biodiversity, soil, and water in a really holistic way into how we think about addressing climate change in Tier 4. We're really committed to this 45% reduction and helping the industry achieve this. We're a convener. We try to be a trusted authority, and we're really shifting our focus towards acceleration to helping the industry accelerate change, accelerate the adoption of better materials and better practices in the Tier 4 area. So it's a really exciting an organization that has a lot of different areas of focus, but is also very focused on a very specific part of the value chain. I'm still involved with Stella as an advisor, and I worked there for almost 9 years and leading sustainability for her. And it was, an incredible experience. I have nothing but the best things to say. But I am looking forward to getting to kind of dive in and focus in the soil part of the world. I'm a bit of an agricultural nut in kind of a weird way, in a fashion way.
They're lucky to have you. You can bring so much knowledge to them. Mara, you did a really deep dive into sustainability in your business about 6 years ago, and you mentioned your company is going through another big transition. Can you walk us through that, how you're changing and what is the difference this time around?
6 years ago, we did make the transition towards the beginning of this journey towards sustainability. And fast forward to these past 7 months, we were really pushed off the hamster wheel, you could say, and went through a very fast and intense contraction where our company really had to be cut in half on an employee level and on a business size level. And with that came some pretty big decisions. And one of those decisions was about not going forward with producing our Fall 20 collection. One of the outcomes of the pandemic was a lot of customers canceling orders and us getting stuck with a lot of inventory. So making more inventory we knew would not solve our problem. So we had to make the hard decision of not going forward with that collection. And it was definitely a collection that I had a real connection to. But we decided to really dig into what we had and work from that space and be very transparent with our customers and let them know that this is where we're at as a business. And in order for us to really stay in our commitments to do the least harm, we have to make this decision, and we hope that you'll come with us. It was about re-storytelling and reshooting the product that we had to give new life to it and give it a seasonless kind of angle and approach that people could wear this any month. Another change that we made was around shifting our company towards a direct-to-consumer model and getting out of the majority of our wholesale relationships and editing down to about 10 solid accounts. But now understanding that if we are going to be able to slow down our own pace, shift our calendars, be able to sell, in season as opposed to putting things out way early and they end up on sale, we were going to have to own more of our business by going towards a direct-to-consumer model. And I think a lot of brands are feeling that and looking how to do that now if they hadn't already done that. And this was a big wake-up call for so many people. And by doing it, it gives us an opportunity to be more responsive, make things within season, really be able to use our liabilities, give more longevity to our product as opposed to being on these markdown cycles that, just are constantly pushing new, instead giving us the opportunity to build in to a longer life cycle for the clothes that we are making and stick with them for longer and get out of this short attention span idea that is really a huge problem and working against our own sustainability goals.
I huge, because after 20 years, it's really hard to change the way that you do things. It's examples like you're setting that I think is looking at what the situation is and just choosing to go through the pain of changing, which I was thinking, Spencer, I was thinking about you because like with Mara, her brand she's always been sustainably minded, but her brand itself started in a day when we really weren't thinking about sustainability. So you've worked for Marc Jacobs, you went to Parsons, you worked for Marc Jacobs, you've worked for Dries Van Noten, and yet when you went out to start your business, you started it in a very sustainable way with lots of good principles from the get-go. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I think you really hit the nail on the head when you said that, Mara had started her business before that was a conversation that people had. It was like not a priority. Sustainability was not even a word that was like spoken in a design studio maybe until 5 years ago. It was something that I was interested in. I did my graduate thesis at Parsons that was all kind of sustainability focused and looking for textiles, and this was 2008, I guess, which again was like kind of before that conversation had happened in the industry, and it was very, very, very different landscape of how to do that. And then finished school, got a job at Marc Jacobs, dream job. Whoa, this is insane. Nobody cared. It was just like not a thing. But the conversation caught up. You're watching this conversation about global warming and just the crisis that we're all dealing with. And I started the business after this became a conversation. So I think it would be naive and old-fashioned and a bit rude to the rest of the world to say that my young creative voice is more important than our future as a species. It's the only way to do it. And I think, establishing a business now, you need to think about these things. You sort of are required to. And there's no board, there's no history, there's no one telling me that I can't do it this way, So I get to say the rules. I can say, well, we're not going to make that product because I don't know how to do that in a good way. We can take our time and really build the business the way that we want to and kind of just make our own rules.
Well, in a way, the huge brands of today took a long time to grow. We accelerate ourselves so fast. So, if you're in it for the long haul, the way that you're doing it is really, I think right now the right way. We don't need to be going so fast. I think more and more people are realizing that, and you can sort of make it part of your storytelling too. And it gives you a lot of pleasure to buy things that are made well. Which, Claire, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned it earlier about raw materials. Many people, that the relationship of the agriculture industry and fashion is known to people like yourself, sort of insider baseball. But can you talk about the importance of understanding agriculture's role in fashion and how we all can understand how we can be responsible stewards? Again, it's another one of those conversations people like agriculture, but I think there's going to come a day when it's going to be very cool to know about these things. So we want to hear it from you first.
Well, I mean, the industry uses, not that many materials. We kind of break it down. Polyester is the most used material in fashion. We have to acknowledge that, which has nothing to do with agriculture and has only to do with oil. But as second most used is cotton, and third most used is man-made cellulosics. And cotton is an agricultural product. Of course, we grow it. Agriculture and cotton are hand in hand. Cotton is often grown as a monoculture where it's just cotton, but a lot of times cotton plants are also mixed in with food. So in that way, there's a direct tie into how we think of agriculture in our food systems. And we also use a lot of wool, we use leather in the industry, and these are all also ties in directly into agricultural systems. Agriculture, when it comes to climate change, has a really big role to play in everything. So how we grow our crops, how we let our animals graze, directly relates back to whether or not we're going to achieve this 45% reduction. And it relates back really directly to soil, actually. So even taking it kind of one step further away from growing or grazing to the very, very basic part of the planet. Soil is literally the foundation of everything. It's the foundation of civilization, and it's also really what we need to maintain clean water supplies and to mitigate climate change. We kind of don't always pay enough attention to soil as maybe we should, but it is the largest terrestrial store of carbon on the planet. Only the ocean stores more carbon globally than soil. Soil is our sponge. It's the thing that we need to keep healthy so we can draw carbon out of the atmosphere and lock it away. And to do that, we need healthy agricultural systems. So, if we're talking about cotton more concretely and more specifically, and I think this is probably a little bit what Mara was talking about, but when you're talking kind of about these idea of climate positive, it is this. It's about transitioning a system that is, maybe turning soil into something that is more reflective and less of a sponge back into that sponge. So if we're thinking about organic cotton compared to conventional, or building in these ideas of regenerative systems into our agriculture, it's about reversing negative patterns and turning them into positive patterns. So with cotton, that's maybe about the type of compost you use, reducing the amount of tillage that happens so that you can draw down this carbon and lock it away into the soil. If we're thinking about wool or alpaca or cashmere or really any animal that grazes, it's about thinking about those grazing patterns. What can we do to reduce some of the stress on the land? So if it's Mongolia, for example, which is where cashmere comes from, has had a bad history in the past of really overgrazing the grasslands there. So what happened is we turned really beautiful grasslands into Mongolia, basically into a desert. And so what we need to do is we need to reverse that. And to do that, we need to change the way that animals graze, because animals can actually kickstart the carbon cycle themselves just by being animals, as long as, again, it's in balance. And a lot of this idea of regenerative, these ideas of changing grazing, we really do need to acknowledge that they're indigenous practices as well, I have to say. Regenerative practices are indigenous practices, and it's really going back to the kind of more ancient ways of existing with the planet. In the grazing context, a lot of the time, it's really about mimicking the native species that were there. So I'm in Montana, so we can use the example of bison. So traditionally, bison roamed the plains of Montana. And so what we would be doing if we were looking at regenerative grazing in Montana is we'd be looking at how did the bison live here in harmony? And can we mimic that with our cows or our sheep or whatever we have here that we need as humans? And, that's the kind of agricultural tie. And it is, I know it's so far removed, in probably the consumer's mind to a t-shirt, but that is the system that exists to bring you a t-shirt. There's farmers and there's huge human rights parts of this that we need to look at, which Mara touched on. There's a lot of people involved and a very large system in place that actually gets us the fibers that we need to create the products that we love.
We're so used to seeing the labels of organic t-shirt. Will we have a regenerative t-shirt? Is that kind of where we're headed?
I hope so. I think that, we need to be careful not to overclaim. And we need to be careful to listen to science. I would like to hope that the pandemic has taught us to listen to science. Maybe that's an overly ambitious wish. But, we need to listen to climate science and we need to measure this stuff to make sure that we're doing it in a way where it is actually going to achieve what we want it to achieve. And with regenerative, it's a little tricky to claim it right now. Because we have to measure the soil, we have to measure the carbon, but I think that's the direction we're moving, is how can we create systems, or, if you're a brand, how do you get to know your farmers so you can work with them on changing their mechanisms so you can have that story about, this is the farming system that brought you this t-shirt and we worked with them to lock away soil carbon, so it's a climate positive t-shirt.
Yeah, that's very good. That's the story right there. Speaking of stories, Mara, your brand is not just, working at sustainability, but also you've taken a politically active stand in the past several years. And I know, that's always a very personal subject to a designer. And there's always like this push and pull of whether or not you should bring it into your brand. Has your community of customers followed you on this journey? Or is it something that you feel has caused a controversy?
There's never been a separation really between me and my brand. So the, part of my life that is mother, wife, daughter, artist, sister, creator, all of those parts also exists within my business. So that there isn't a real divide. So for me, speaking to the injustices and what needs to happen politically to make for a more equitable and fair world and country and world, we need to be vocal about that. And I also sit in a position of privilege and influence, and to not use that position to help create some kind of change or get people inspired to take action and to become more politically active in their lives to see the changes that they want to happen, I would be misusing really the bit of power that I do have. So from the human level to the environmental level, it is extraordinarily important to be a brand that communicates outwardly about what they believe in. And I think that more people are looking for brands to be vocal now, and that the days of just talk about, just stay in the fashion lane are over, and people expect brands to actually speak to their values, speak to their beliefs, stand for something, take risks, put themselves out there. And of course, we have lost customers to it, but ultimately I feel we gain more. Whoever leaves, a few more join. So it's okay. And there's more respect for communicating than there is for not.
The word privilege, I think probably everyone on this call is in a very privileged position. And, I think sometimes that shopping sustainably, eating organic, and other actions of that mindset can be seen as just being part of a privileged class. Spencer, especially you're on the higher end versus the lower end. How are you successfully addressing that kind of stereotype and showing that what you're really doing is something natural and benefiting rather than taking away. Does that make sense?
Aside from the sort of the price conversation of like, by having something of a certain cost to a client, that's going to eliminate obviously certain people from the conversation. But on a more, I guess, kind of philosophical level, the way that we do it is we try and just avoid this sort of spiritual one-upmanship that you kind of get in the community of sustainability, kind of, I'm better than you by I'm, more green than you. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all going to suffer from climate crisis. We're all in this together. It's a big soup of, it's a hot mess, basically. And we try and make it fun for people to have this conversation. We try and, lure them in with joy and help, I don't know, just make this like not such punishment and sort of, you can only drink wheatgrass shots and wear vintage jeans and we all have to suffer together. It's sort of, that's not the solution. I mean, the way we dress is an emotional thing. The way you express yourself in the world is, we are humans. This is what we do. We make art, we sing, we dance, we, make jokes. And we want people to have that same emotional connection with the world that they live in. So we try and funnel that energy into projects like collaborating with Smokey Bear. Everybody loves Smokey Bear. He's an icon. He's like Santa. And we can then make cool products that, reflect your interests, and you get a cute thing, and we donate to the, we sort of take care of the forest side of the stuff. And it's about creating kind of win-win situations for everybody. And keeping it fun, keeping it light, I think.
I'd like to ask a question for each of you all. Within each of your respective companies, what, is one goal that you aspire to achieve in increasing your sustainability platform or efforts in the next year?
Now, one thing, that's hard. There's so many things. I think for me in this new role, it's about enabling and accelerating the change, which is very vague, but I think that companies need help to understand their levers, what and how they can make the changes internally, and not to scare them, but to let them know that it's serious, but there are ways to get through this collectively. And so I hope that, over the next year, we can help the industry come to terms with, yes, things have to change, but there are ways that we can start making those changes now, and move at a pace and in an accelerated pace to do it so that we don't run out of time. Because I agree, the 10-year deadline, the 1.5 degree pathway is quite intense and can be quite daunting. But we don't have the luxury of ignoring it anymore. I think that trying to present it with a tone of optimism is critical. I think that optimism requires a lot of courage and, not making it so heavy and scary that people don't want to engage with it, but giving them those tools and pathways to make the changes that they need. That may not be one thing, but that's my answer.
No, that's a good one. Mara, what about you?
For me, the ones that I really focused on were circularity, and taking full responsibility and ownership for the full life cycle of any product that we are manufacturing, and having instilling programs now that we have systems to take back product from people, trying to establish a peer-to-peer system where customers can buy and sell from each other, and we can keep our clothes out of the landfills for as long as possible and give them as many lives as possible, and bring the joy of wearing them to as many people for as many times. Another part of that was around collaboration and the importance of it, working with each other through this movement and not being stuck in any kind of proprietary ideas. And if we're going to make this movement work, it has to be in partnership with people and helping each other. And we wouldn't be where we are now without the help and support of the people that have been doing the work before us. And so also a big part of this future vision of us is being in service to others and being able to listen and hear where we are needed to help and take action within fashion and outside of fashion.
Yeah, that's so great to hear. Spencer, what about you?
I think we're in a really exciting time in the business right now. We're 3 years in. And my big goal right now, especially after this year, it was like we kind of paused on the innovation side. And this is my goal for 2021, is just to like really, really look at innovation and how we can push that creatively, like innovative products, innovative textiles, innovative systems in the business, whether that's circularity, the auditing, just the way that we're selling things, and just like really, really honing in on pushing that side of, I want to do like really crazy stuff.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. I mean, that's pushing innovation, I think is something that I think every one of you will be doing. I'm really excited. It only takes a few people to make a movement, to make big change. We need leaders. There's lots of people that like to follow. And I see each one of you all as great leaders. And just thank you so much for joining us and for giving so much insight into, your incredible journeys. From the sound of it looks like there's great things on the horizon for each of you. And that's only going to help our industry as we all come together for the benefit of the environment and our society as a whole.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
But I just have to add one thing, Julie. I have to say, when I was saying that about all the people who helped us along the way, just you, Julie, like those early conversations, really, like you and your role in this. And I feel like we should all be like turning the mic back to you right now and asking you the questions as well, because you have sat in this position of guidance and leadership for a really long time and have been someone truly on the forefront of this work and have believed in it since before so many people. And thank you for that. And you really do represent that truest form of collaboration and service. You are so generous with that. And so I just want to say thank you to you for this and all of the work that you've done for so many years now and helped so many people along their way.
Well, thank you.
I want to echo that, Julie. You've helped nerds like me navigate the fashion world. So thank you. I couldn't have done it without you.
Well, fashion's a community. So, while you're being a nerd and Mara's over there making beautiful dresses and swimsuits, Spencer's making films and collaborating with Smokey the Bear. I mean, it's all fun.
Yeah, we're all a bunch of nerds, let's be honest.
I mean, fashion impacts everyone. It's not going to go away. We can't, we have to figure it out. And I feel like that's an interesting thing, an interesting koan. And we will. So anyways, thank you all so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Julie.
Circle of Influence podcast is co-hosted by me, Julie Gilhart, and Sarah Kozlowski, and produced by Hanger Studios. If you like what you're hearing, rate and review. It helps other listeners to find us. And of course, thank you so much for listening.